Good evening, viewers, and welcome to another program of Political Scope. My name is Stacey Carmichael James, and this evening I'm joined by Minister within the Ministry of Agriculture, the Honorable Ali Bashk, and Head of the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority, Mr. Lionel Wordsworth. Gentlemen, good evening.
Thank you very much.
And it's a pleasure having you on the program today. Now we'll be discussing some developments in the rice sector as well as drainage and irrigation developments over the years. Now let me start with you, Minister Bashk. Could you give us a brief history of the rice sector in Guyana?
Thank you very much, Stacey. I just want to mention briefly during the period 1957-64 period. That is the time when agriculture really and truly was moving forward in a rapid pace, and that was the first PPP government period. Rice has moved ahead, the different non-traditional crop also, and you remember the famous calypso during that period of time. You were then, I didn't think you were born then.
Exactly.
At the time, Eric Williams was the Prime Minister of Trinidad, and we were supplying Trinidad with plantain. We had abundance of plantain because our culture was moving up very rapidly. And Eric Williams had wanted to ban British Guyana plantain, then we were British, we weren't independent then. And there was a calypso sung by the Mighty Sparrow, and he said, "No, Eric, no, don't ban BG plantain, for one BG plantain hut would fill the pot." At that time, we were called the breadbasket of the Caribbean, and agriculture really and truly was moving forward in a very rapid space during that period of time. Then we had a change of government. Within the period of the 70s and the 80s, there was a decline, a tremendous decline in agriculture, especially in the rice industry. And I can give you my personal experience in the Region 2 area and also in the Berbice area, East Berbice, the West Coast. The decline was so much so that the previous government, the People's National Congress, had moved into the area of selling out private people land, putting on public action sales. There was a gentleman in Region 2 by the name of Amrit Atta. He had a large portion of land, but because of the atrocity of the drainage and irrigation system, he couldn't pay his mortgage, he couldn't pay his indebtedness, and as a result, the state moved into sold his land on private action. There are many other instances. You recall the People's National Congress also sold out the Anna Regina 20-ton rice mill that we have had, was a state-owned mill. They won on the west coast of the Mara, and they won on the east coast of the Mara also. Those were sold. It was sold only because of one reason. The maintenance and the rice industry was falling apart. That rice mill in Anna Regina alone had a capacity of intake for over 300,000 bags of paddy. They have also sold out the silo at Somerset and Burks with a capacity of 60,000 intake. That was also sold out. Apart from that, you remember the St. Vincent Rice Mill Company that bought out that mill. And not only that, there was about 600 acres of land in what we call then the Tordep area. Those lands were owned by the cattle rearers from mainly Bountyhall, Walton Hall, to Dartmouth. Most of them were from Dartmouth cattle rearers. And there were about 600 acres of land. Those lands was taken away from those small farmers during those days, and it was sold to CARICOM Rice Mill. So there was a drop tremendously, and the trenches and the roads and farm to market roads were atrocious. In those days, in the 70s and 80s, farmers, especially rice farmers, their produce used to be at the roadside for weeks before going to the mill. So the conditions there was extremely bad during that period, within the 70s and 80s. That is when you had the downfall of the rice industry. Also, all those marketing centers that were set up by the previous government, many of them were closed. There was a service in the riverine area in Berbice in Essequibo, where farmers' produce used to come to the center. And the access, all those things were closed after a period of time by the previous government. And then the economy started to drop more and more. Farmers really and truly had a very rough and very difficult time during those periods.
Okay. Thank you very much, Minister. And let me move over to Mr. Wordsworth. Could you also provide us with an overview of the drainage system at the point a few years ago, like let's say 20 years back? How was the drainage and irrigation system in Guyana? And how has it improved?
Good evening, viewers. Thank you very much, Stacey.
You're welcome.
The, as Minister alluded to earlier, agriculture in Guyana, because of the terrain, the low coastal plain, that we carry out our agricultural activities largely, and we are below sea level. So with drainage and irrigation service in Guyana, as I would say, it forms a primary foundation of any form of agriculture. Any cropping, whether it be cattle, that service is important. And with the absence of that service, it will affect agriculture in some form. 30 years back, 35 years back, the drainage and irrigation system in Guyana, which was built over 150 years ago, primarily for agricultural purposes. At the time, principally, it was sugar, and then rice came on board and in diversification. The system at that time, those years back, I would say was in a state of neglect. And as the years goes by, then it was in an annual cycle of deterioration. What has happened then, many of our key infrastructure like sluices were abandoned, canals were for some reason were sold. Some pumps were also being vandalized and sold, and there wasn't that program of maintaining or either expanded drainage system. So what has happened is that, as far as I can recollect, the program that we have now that been put in place about 15 years now, because the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority previously was the National Drainage and Irrigation Board, and the whole sector was reformulated into an authority. And at that time we developed many programs. The first one would have been in a phase where it was to resuscitate many of these abandoned structures, and even some of them we can't even go back to them because you would know some places along the east bank, some of the channels has property on them. Was to resuscitate these infrastructure, and at the same time, because we have now effects of climate change taking a toll on countries like ours, whereby rainfall, effects of heavy rainfall, prolonged drought period, there is this need, a much greater need, not only to resuscitate and rebuild, but we have to expand this infrastructure to cope with this kind of effect that we're now experiencing. So take for example, many of our agricultural polders, like Canals polder that was built many years back, Blackbush polder, the East Demerara Conservancy with the age of 130 years old, they were not complete to the functionality as they desire, and there it is. Over the past 5 years or so, we have current programs that's going, that are installing the kind of system that they so desire. So much has been done, and I'm not saying we are where we are, but there's much more to be done in terms of drainage and irrigation services in Guyana.
Okay, thank you very much. As we're on this topic, could you allude to some of the challenges that is currently being faced, not only in the rice sector, but in the agriculture sector?
There are several challenges. One of the biggest challenges we got, because the neglect for a number of decades, for not maintaining the grounds, especially in the outfall, you find that there is a lot of accretion taking place in and around the sea sluices. And as was mentioned just now, we're below sea level. And especially when there is a sowing period, especially in the rice industry, you find water coming down from the back. And sometimes you have rainfall with high intensity, chart period. And then when you have high tide, then be below sea level. and accretion taking place consistently all around. Because if you look at the sea coast, how it runs, you will see where our channels are and how our sea sluice is situated. And that is why the ministry and NDIA has a serious challenge. We are now putting pontoons with excavators on them, and consistently we got to cut them out there. It's a very costly exercise to maintain and clear these sea sluices. That is the only way we can have and maintain the drainage and irrigation system. Certainly in the future, as was experimented recently in Essequibo, where some groins are built, we have seen the importance of maintaining, sustaining, and creating back new groins in some of these areas where we have these sea sluices. That is the only way we can keep this channel keep flowing all the time and have more security inwards, especially not only for agriculture areas, also the housing areas, and people who are planting non-traditional crops in low-lying areas and so on. And those are serious challenges for non-traditional crops also. Many places I go, and that is why now we are encouraging what you call shade house, building of shade house. You're building it about 4 feet from the ground with small blocks, with drip irrigation and fertilization through drip by using drums, for 45-gallon drums or the 450-gallon drums with what you call the PVC pipes, and you use the drip or the sprinkles, and that also gives security to farming family who are doing things like non-traditional crops and kitchen gardens and so on and so forth. So those are some of the challenges. The challenges also has always been because there are demands from farmers for us to maintain, sustain what you call farm to market road. For Orton Road, we are trying to build what you call Sun and Loom Road. And now we're moving to what you call Crush Run, and in some cases like in the Blackbush Boulder area. And some part like in Dartmouth and the Essequibo Coast, in Bushlet area and so on, where we have farm to market road, which is very good in terms of the capacity that you don't have to have trailers stuck in the mud and so on. It can easily pass through because it's being built with crushed run stone. So those are some of the challenges we face with. We got to continue to maintain those roads. We got to continue to build on that also, and to ensure that there's security for farmers taking their produce from farm to markets. Other challenges also we have is market, especially for rice. We have many, many markets, but the markets are not the same in terms of the price offered by the various countries and different countries. We also have the challenge in terms of payment to farmers, timely payment to farmers. The laws are there where there have to be an agreement between millers and farmers. Legally, the laws are there. Within 2 weeks, they're supposed to have 50%, and within 3 months, 90 days, they're supposed to be finished payment between the millers and the farmers. But this is not happening on many occasions, and those are difficulties also we have to work on to see how we can able to get farmers, because farmers also have a lot of problems. They also take loans from the bank. They got to maintain their family. They have children who are going to schools. Some of them are going to university, technical institutes. They got to sustain and maintain them. They got to also pay up their loans at the banks and so on. So some of those are challenges that we got to face. We're facing with at the moment, coming to us with from farmers and so on, and residents.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wordsworth, what are some of the challenges that you're experiencing in terms of drainage and irrigation? And how do you plan to address these challenges?
Minister alluded to the persistent challenging, which is one that is cyclic also, and is periodic with accretion along the foreshore, which minimize our ability to effect drainage by gravity, opening our sluice gates. But if the lands that has to be drained, if it's not being done by sluices, then it has to be, water has to be evacuated out by either pump drainage, mostly some cases electrical and diesel driven pumps, and there's a huge cost to that. And to dredge these outfall channels is very challenging in terms of the time spent in doing one when there are several to be done, and that's a huge cost to that also. Um, and that effort cannot be stopped. If we are to sustain a proper and or I would say an acceptable service of drainage, that has to continue and expand it also. To improve the system the way we want it, take for example under the LCDS program studies, it shows that we require 1 billion US near-term investment to improve drainage only services along the coast. Apart from that, recently you would recall the devastating floods of 2005. And there was a special program, the Conservancy Adaptation Project, that was done whereby several analytical studies was done and modeling of the conservancy and its systems. Because Region 4 and Georgetown is the most populated region in Guyana, much of our economic activities situated in this region and Georgetown. So, and it also is the most vulnerable to flooding. A study was done which caused the intervention that we required to make to upgrade our infrastructure to cope with the kind of rainfall we experienced in 2005. And that cost is 120 million US dollars. And what we have at this time is just 10 million US to make that intervention. So there is much more to be done, not only, as I said, to operate and maintain the system, but it has to be upgraded over time, and that program of upgrading and expanding the infrastructure has to continue. Also, in agricultural areas, I would say also the DNI charges which are placed for users of water is not always there. That revenue collection is not to the desired level. So it always poses that huge challenge on central government to fund these activities. At the moment, we have several of these ongoing projects. You're aware of the Northern Relief Channel for the Conservancy. Very soon that will be completed, and we're now talking about commissioning date. Okay. In Blackbush Polar, which and the Frontlands, which has about 40,000 acres of land, are very vulnerable during the rainy season. Over huge project of creating new outlets there in Canals Polder, that is taking place also with new sluices and pumps. For last year and this year, in terms of mechanical drainage adding to along the coast, 18 pumps would have added to the system, 8 of which are the largest of its kind in Guyana, which was funded through the India line of credit and some from central government. And this all forms part of that program we want to achieve in the years ahead.
Okay, before we move on, could you also allude to some of the projects that we can expect within this year that will boost the existing drainage system that we have here in Guyana?
What we have currently, the Northern Relief Channel for the Conservancy, which had that would have come at a state of worry or at a red alert state based on analytical results of rainfall once in every 5 years. Take for example 2005 to now, the Conservancy would have reached its top 15 high levels of water, threatening level over its for the past 100 years has occurred within the last 10 years. That would reduce with the commissioning of the Northern Relief Channel from 1 in 5 to 1 in 50 years. At Blackbush Polar, the new outlet at Bengal would be put in place and commissioned this year. Also, we're adding 2 pump stations, one at Eversham, one at number 43. In Myconi Creek, a very vulnerable area at Pine Ground that's largely occupied with rice cultivation, a new drainage pump station will be commissioned there. Right here on East Coast at Paradise, we've already put into operation one of that project. On the West Bank at Canal number 1, a new pump station has been added there to work along with the sluice. At Windsor Forest also, and in Essequibo Coast, very shortly work would commence at Lima. Excuse me. Also on the West Bank at Lagrange and its neighboring village, sluices are being built there also. So these, just to list them, these are some of the major projects that would be completed in this year.
Okay, thank you. Minister Bashk, could you also tell us what are some of the plans moving forward for not only the rice sector, but agriculture in general for 2015?
Thank you. For example, recently we have had a meeting with some private sector, people who are interested in developing the coffee industry in the Palm area. It was neglected for a number of decades. And the coffee production in the Palm and some Amerindian communities have been there for a number of decades. And there are some people who know private sector individuals, joint ventures with Guyanese and overseas-based investors are looking at it. They have already started to set up a plant there that they will process coffee. That would be very much encouraging to the farmers to go back to coffee production. And you know also, only the hucksters used to buy water coconut from Palm Room and elsewhere to sell in and around Georgetown and many other areas like in Linden and so on. But now coconut is being sold right there. They're on the spot. Water coconut is being sold at $40 per each. And there are also people who private individuals who are setting up small plants there. Like there's a lady by the name of Vilma De Silva. She is purchasing 7,000 water coconut per day. And she has about 32 workers who are working there. There's a great encouragement. We want to encourage that to more and more farmers going to coconut production. And we have also this year, and consistently we're doing it. We're helping the small farmers in the different communities, Borbies, West Coast, East Coast. In the Palm area, we are spending millions of dollars on a yearly basis to impole lands in those areas, and it is showing great results. We want to continue to do that too. We are looking also at the Aurora project this year. There's a huge project there that we have started, the feasibility study that already they are complete. That will put about 5,500 additional acres under cultivation. This year also, as you know, we have got an increase in rice production. We have moved very far away. And we want to see and look at what these developing countries are doing, like India and China, to use our product, our rice, and see how we can turn it into new products. And we want to set up what we call our rice cereal factory in Anna Regina, that is in Region 2. So we can make out of rice cereal that we are importing from outside. Some countries are using rice to make dozens of different products. And we got to see how we can add values from our commodities that we're producing.
This rice cereal that you spoke about, Minister, that would be something like what the supermarkets have, like the Rice Krispies and the rice
Crisps,
okay.
Something like that. So
similar to that.
Similar to that. Not only that, it will also create jobs. So you have to create jobs. So we're looking at extending to and encouraging more people who are more investors to come in, either individually or also joint ventures, to see where we can. While our agriculture is developing, we also want to see how we can develop small industries to take care of our produce. I was talking to a gentleman from FAO this morning in my office who's representing FAO for the Caribbean. And he was talking to me and saying to me that Guyana has a great potential in advancing agriculture. And I told him that we need a lot of support also, support from the private sector. Private sector has a very important role to play. And we as the government will have to see where we can also look at areas where we can have meaningful dialogue and discussions and come up to some decisions that can help to move our economy forward.
Okay. Thank you very much, Minister. Well, we're about to wrap up. Mr. Wordsworth, any closing remarks before we close off today's program?
Just to say that we will continue the effort to maintain a system that's so important to us, and would call on the public to desist from misusing these infrastructure, specifically pointing to the dumping of garbage or disused material that they don't need into the waterways, because it do affect the functioning, the desired functioning in many instances, and in some cases damages some of these equipment and structures we have. So it's an important service, and we will continue to focus and give it the desired effort for it to be efficient as far as possible.
All right, then. Thank you very much. I want to thank you, Minister Bash, for joining us on Political Scope today, and also thank you, Mr. Wordsworth. And also thank you, viewers, for joining us on Political Scope. My name is Stacey Carmichael James. With me today was the Minister within the Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Ali Bash, and Head of the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority, Mr. Lionel Wordsworth. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.